From the Alex Trebek stage at Sony Picture Studios, this is Inside Jeopardy!
Hello and welcome back to Inside Jeopardy, your exclusive and official podcast destination for all things happening in the world of Jeopardy! I'm Sarah Foss, and I'm here once again today with Buzzy Cullen.
Hey, Sarah, how you doing?
Hanging in.
I know. If I sound a little tired.
Holidays are coming in hot.
Yeah, well, it's
You
Hanukkah.
guys are in the throes of Hanukkah as well.
I don't know if we call it the throes of Hanukkah, but yes, we are in the middle of Hanukkah.
So in the world of Jeopardy, I want everyone to keep your eyes out for our second chance announcement. That's coming out tomorrow. So you're going to see all 36 players from last season who are getting that second chance at redemption. Again, these are players who came so close to a victory. And over, these 4 weeks of competition, 12 of them are going to be Jeopardy champions for the rest of their lives.
Unfathomable.
Right? And 4 of them are going to go on to Champions Wildcard. So the stakes are big. The competition is great. We actually just wrapped up those second chance games yesterday in JPT. Believe it or not, we are done with all of our tapings for 2023. Incredible. And we're really starting to gear up for the Tournament of Champions. I've kind of alluded to it on the pod that it was going to be the biggest field ever. And I know people started thinking, what does she mean by that? Well, we pulled off
It means the most people in the competition. That's literally, it's pretty, no.
But who would those people be? So we partnered with 8 of our affiliates, and we pulled off some great surprises last week. We talked to Emmett Stanton from Baltimore WBFF, Sean McShane from WBZ in Boston, Yogesh Rout from KATU in Portland, Jake Diaruta from WPRI Providence, Rhode Island, Melissa Clapper from WPVI in Philadelphia, Brian Henniger from WBIR in Knoxville, Kevin Bell from WJLA in Washington, D.C., and Jared Watson from KTVT in Dallas, our new affiliate there. What do these 8 Jeopardy champions all have in common, you ask, if you don't already know? Well, they're 3-game winners, Buzzy, who are headed directly to the TOC. And we pulled off this surprise because we reached out to these affiliates and we said, hey, we have this cool thing we want to do. We're going to have you reach out to these contestants and say, you know what? We hear there's a new competition coming up, Jeopardy Champions Wildcard, and as a 3-game winner, pretty likely chance that you're going to end up in the Champions Wildcard. So do you want to come into the station, maybe talk about your anticipation of possibly being invited and what it's been like being a Jeopardy champion? Then we got Ken in on the joke, and we recorded him doing 8 different messages. The gist being something like, hey, Yogesh, Ken Jennings here. Great to see you. I do have some news that I wanted to share. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to offer you a spot in our upcoming Champions Wildcard, because you're going directly to the Tournament of Champions. And the reactions, you can find a lot of them online on Reddit. Their reactions were just priceless. For a few seconds, I think they thought the news anchors and Jeopardy and Ken were the cruelest people in television, but they were relieved a few seconds later to know that they're bypassing Champions Wildcard. They're heading directly to the TOC. It is a field of 27. I think people have connected most of the dots, but we have Ike Barinholtz, our Celebrity Jeopardy champion, coming back. We have Justin Bolson, who won our high school reunion tournament. And then we've got, super champions like Chris Panullo, Ray Lalonde. Then you've got your Ben Chan, your Stephen Webb, your Hannah Wilson, your Troy Meyer, your Suresh Krishnan, Luigi de Guzman, Ben Goldstein, David Sibley, Matthew Marcus. The list goes on. It's going to be big. It's going to be good. And of course, we have our 4 champions from our earlier Champions Wildcard games that are wrapping up now. And then we will have the 2 from last season Champion Wildcard competitions coming up. And before you know it, it's going to be February. We're going to tape the TOC. Oh, can you tell I'm excited?
I can tell you're excited. I'm excited. I want to be there. I want to be in the room where it happens.
Yeah. What does this, you were a field of 15. You emerged victorious. What does it conjure up in your mind, the biggest field ever? And what would it mean to pull off a win in that?
Well, I think it certainly would speak to the level of play of whoever won to get through that. What I like about it is no wild cards, I assume.
No wild cards. No, you got to win it to advance.
You got to win it to advance, which I always like, and that's how I play. So I think we'll see some exciting gameplay. And I think this is a really competitive field. I think one of the challenges is going to be, sometimes with a field of 15, you can kind of handicap your competition a little bit. I think with 27 people, almost twice as many competitors, it starts to maybe get harder to kind of remember who, you're going to remember who everyone is, but kind of the style of play and how they play, how to play against them. So I think that's going to be an interesting challenge. And I think as we go through the competition and people start advancing, we'll see a little more of that kind of the stories, the heroes and villains start to kind of eye each other a little more particularly. I have heard from some of these people that they are out for blood. I was at SporkleCon last year. I saw a couple of them there. These people, they're not here to have a good time. They're here to win this TOC.
Well, and some of these, champions emerging from Champions Wildcard that are heading into the TOC are going to be facing off against the people who actually took down, their initial runs. Like, these are rematches that are going to be really fun to see if it lines up that way. And we are going to be playing that, first to 3 win, best of 7 type final again. So, it's going to be a long...
I'm sweating thinking about it.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had a 2-day taping, and I'm sure that felt like a lot. This is going to be a marathon.
Yeah.
But an exciting one.
I
can't wait. Front row seats we're both going to have.
Are we going to go through this whole field of 27 and talk through them again like we did last time?
We have to.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yes. Now that the official postseason has kicked off, we're going to really try to give you, a little bit more insight into who you are going to see in these upcoming competitions and culminating in the TOC.
Excellent.
We also have another exciting pod, not just about the future, but what's happening right here today. We're going to highlight some of those Jeopardy! Champions wildcard quarterfinal games that are going on, and we had the last Celebrity Jeopardy! Quarterfinal as well. So the quarterfinals are wrapping up, and a little later in the pod, we're going to be joined by Champions wildcard finalist of the Clubs group, Dennis Chase. But before all that, we're going to take a quick look back at this week in Jeopardy! History.
Welcome to the finals of our first ever Jeopardy! Professors Tournament. It is a 2-day total point affair, and by the end of tomorrow's game, we will know the name of the professor who will be returning to campus with the $100,000 top prize and a spot in the Tournament of Champions. There is a lot at stake. Welcome to our finalists, Sam, Ed, and Elisa. Good luck, and let's go to work in the Jeopardy! Round.
That's right. It was December 16th, 2021, when we kicked off the 2-day total point affair final for the first ever Jeopardy! Professors Tournament. Elisa Hovey, Ed Hashima, and Bring It Sam Buttrey were all competing. It was Sam who took home the title, the $100,000 grand prize, and earned a spot in the following year's Tournament of Champions. After his win, Sam told us, "This has been the greatest time, and to come out ahead of all these other great players is something I will remember forever." He also added, "I know there are some strong players, but I want to go up against them. I want to play against Matt Amodio. He's a strong player, and I'd like to see how I can do." Well, Sam did just that in the semifinals of the Tournament of Champions. That's, of course, where Matt was seated. And Sam beat Matt, advancing to our finals last season, where he faced off against none other than Amy Schneider and Andrew He. Of course, Sam would go on to face them yet again in Jeopardy! Masters. Always looking forward to another opportunity to see Sam back on the Alex Trebek stage. I have to say, I love all the little odes to Sam that our players continue to do, the Bring It's. Although online, I've been hearing some people they're not loving the Bring It.
I think everyone's entitled to their opinion, but some opinions are just wrong.
Yeah. Is there ever too much Bring It Buttrey in the world?
Yeah, I think if players are having fun with it, then it's a good thing. I think if it, any joke can be beaten to death, as evidenced by my meteoric fall. It's so funny that people always talk about a meteoric rise when, in fact, meteors always fall. But anyway.
I love that.
I think when the Professors Tournament was announced, it was something new that we hadn't experienced. There's regular Jeopardy, there's been Teachers Tournament, but the Professors Tournament was something new. I think there were some doubters out there, and Sam emerged from it and has really become an icon.
Well, and as we will discuss in the game highlights, that field in that Professors Tournament is continuing to prove just how strong
Well, let's
that
do
they
that.
were. All
Let's get
right.
into those game highlights.
We kicked off the week with our fourth quarterfinal game for the Hearts group. Julia Markham Cameron, Finn Corrigan, and Kristen Thomas McGill. It was a close game throughout, with Julia taking a small lead in Double Jeopardy, and she maintained that lead heading into final, but all three players were in contention. Both Julia and Kristen were able to come up with the correct responses, and so it was Julia who secured the win and her spot in the semifinals. Interesting fact about this game that Ken actually pointed out to me. Of course, this was when we were using some of our redeployed material. And so one of the clues came from one of Ken's games way back in 2004. The category was math, calculated as the ratio of S to R. This measure of an angle is similar to the word that R stands for. Ken, back in the day, responded radius. Kristen said radial, but the correct response, radian.
Of course. My older kid is on the Math Olympiad team now, and so I've been diving back into math in order to, so all of these things are very top of mind for me.
Well, I just think it speaks to the fact that even though we did have to redeploy,
19 years later, it's still hard.
it's still tricky. You know, this Jeopardy, it doesn't get any easier.
Well, I just want to comment on the level of gameplay. This was a really
Yes.
fun game. Great game to watch. You love seeing people do well. Not a lot of wrong answers. Very tight going into final. And even, the most wrong answers in any round was Kristen in the Jeopardy round with 3 incorrect. That's A, not a lot. And B, I think it's okay to get some wrong in the Jeopardy round if you're just trying to find your buzzer mojo. There's so much more money on the board in double.
Absolutely. I think that is a good tactic, and it was a great game to watch. Moving on to Tuesday's quarterfinal with Laura Portwood-Stacer, Andrew Chaikin, and Matt Mirzwa. Another close game heading into Double Jeopardy, but it was Andrew who came on strong with 10 correct responses and a $5,000 daily double to secure a runaway win.
I got called out here during the interview with Matt talking about the fact that he's going to have to face the inscrutable review of Buzzy Cohen. I love the layers, Matt. I love the layers. I'm trying to layer more in my life. So, Matt, you get a thumbs up. I like the textures, and I would love to see a tie next time. But other than that, I give you 2 thumbs up.
And Laura Portwood-Stacer,
Oh, my God.
her sweater was one that she wore in one of her initial appearances because, hey, she won and she got lots of compliments on it. So she brought it out again.
It's funny, for being such analytical and intelligent people, Jeopardy champs are very superstitious.
Absolutely. If it worked once, why not
Exactly.
try it again?
Change nothing.
Well, Ken caught up with our players after the game. Let's have a listen.
Well done. There was a long pause when I thought, oh, maybe none of them have been watching that show. But then you all started writing something long. And I thought maybe they have it.
Took most of the 30 seconds to write that.
That is something we think about that goes into Final Jeopardy composition is, do they have time to actually write the Battle Hymn of the Republic or whatever it is? But this seemed like one where a player who knew it might know it early and would have most of the time to start writing. So, well done. Andrew, that was well played. You were way out in front. What's the secret of your success there?
My intention was to enjoy as many moments as I could remember to enjoy.
Well, that's
That was
nice.
my intention.
That really is a great way to play, I think.
Thank you.
Yes, that response only murders in the building. As he mentioned, these longer responses in final, the writers do give some thought to if it is something that the contestants can, in fact, think of, respond to correctly, and write all those words down in time. But that one worked out for all 3 of our players as they were all correct. What was the longest Final Jeopardy that you had to respond to, Buzzy? Does it come to mind?
I'm trying to think, in my TOC, Waiting for Godot was pretty long. That was
I mean, you wrote much longer things.
I wrote
when
much
you
longer
weren't
things as a
trying to
joke.
actually write the
But I'd
correct response.
already wagered 0, so I could, the second the Think music started, I could just start teasing Alex.
And you probably had those lined up, right?
The first time I didn't, and then
Oh.
and I really wasn't planning on getting more runaways, so I did have to think of them on the spot. But once I had a runaway, I started cooking something up.
Well, they were well enjoyed.
Thank you.
We head into Wednesday's game with Ed Colson, Kate Freeman, and Patrick Hume. Patrick got out to a hot start, but it was Ed who went on a run in Double Jeopardy, finding the first daily double and adding 3,000 to his score. Patrick and Kate worked to close the gap on Ed, but he maintained the lead heading into final, where he was correct to take the win. We mentioned those Professor Tournament players. Ed was actually our alternate in the Professor's Tournament. Then he came back to play in the regular games, but just another sign of how good the field was in that initial Professor's Tournament.
And how good the field is in this quarterfinal. This is, reminds me of the Monday game. It's so tight. I want to congratulate all three players on a really, really well-fought game.
Yes, this was a game that took a little bit to get started. Ken had to redo the open a few times, which rarely happens. But Ken said, "We're going to get this right. I know you're a little worried, but it's going to be okay." And then in the commercial break, he said, I understand Jimmy McGuire, he's, of course, our stage manager and my longtime co-Clue crewer. He said, I understand Jimmy offered you a full refund if you weren't satisfied, and since I had to redo the open 3 times, you will each be receiving $20. He was kidding.
Yes. No.
He's human. It's always good to remember that Ken is human, and sometimes he makes a mistake, which Jimmy will always say, you guys are here for Jeopardy history. That's the first mistake Ken Jennings has ever made.
And those opens are probably, my experience was like the gameplay part, if you're a former player, at least my experience, that's easier than the interview, the opens, the toss to commercial. That was harder for me.
Yeah.
So.
But Ken's ability to memorize in seconds is,
oh my God,
is quite something.
I'm very impressed.
I'm writing those up in between shows. We have very little turnaround time, and then he has to wait for me to give it to him, for which he then memorizes it quickly and comes out and almost always presents it perfectly, with the exception of this show. I have to point out Final Jeopardy in this game.
Okay, let's do it.
Category famous names. Subject of a 2003 film, his 1947 obituary said he fathered at least 100 and died of a heart attack at 14 at a California ranch. Kate responded, who is Will Rogers? Now, of course, she clarified in the post-game chat that she was thinking maybe this was a joke obituary. She didn't actually think that Will Rogers had fathered, 100 children by the time he was 14 or before he was 14. But the correct response, of course, was Seabiscuit. Did you go there when you were going through this?
It took me a little bit to kind of put it together, but
it's not a human.
The age, exactly, the age. That era and the 2003 film, I was able to put it together, and but I can see how if you get on the wrong track, it's easy to get tripped up. Speaking of Kate, I want to point out 2 things. First of all, as you guys may or may not know, I am a nerd, and it looks like Kate put the 3 dots over the A, which is a Tolkien thing.
Yes, we asked her about that. And she did confirm. Yeah.
My house we're really in a deep Tolkien era with my kids. I may have mentioned that one of them was Legolas for Halloween, so I love that. Kate also prepared for her return in a, quote, Rocky IV style training montage. I want to know more because that is Buzzy Cohen to a T.
She was kind of joking, she's like, there was tire pushing.
I did that stuff.
Which are all things you actually did. So
yes.
I feel like this is definitely right there in the Buzzy Cohen, how to get on Jeopardy and succeed.
Not only did I actually do all that stuff, but I also every week watched the training montages from Rocky IV and from Creed.
Makes sense. Does not surprise me. Does not surprise me.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
All right. On Thursday, it was time for Scott Shufelt, Youngshin Wong, and Robin Lozano to take the stage. Youngshin and Robin were battling for the lead until Robin lost 3,000 on the first daily double in Double Jeopardy. Scott then responded correctly to a big 6,400 true daily double to take the lead, which he maintained heading into final despite a valiant effort from Youngshin. In final, though, it was Youngshin who was the only one to come up with the correct response. He tops off that exciting come-from-behind win. His fashion was on point in this game as well, but Buzzy, you will remember.
Of course.
He won Best Dressed.
He absolutely won Best Dressed.
And 2022 Jeopardy honors.
I mean, is this going to be a back-to-back wins situation?
I don't know. He's got some tough competition this season. The thing I loved about Youngshin when he did accept his trophy, he had the trophy in one hand, a Corona in the other.
Yes.
He was there for the party as he was an alternate for the Tournament of Champions. So unlike the other, 21 folks who were there and were going to have to compete the next day, Yang Shen was just there for the party.
Yeah, and I also did enjoy Yang Shen also writing his name in Chinese, kind of a throwback to James Holzhauer writing his name in Japanese back in Masters.
I love it. Yang Shen asked if that was okay, and I said, absolutely. People are always asking, how do we find the things we know? And there's no length that our writers and researchers won't go to get to the correct response. So in this show, we had the category A Donut Shop Dictionary. 1871, the Great Fire of this city starts in a barn on DeKoven Street. Correct response, what is Chicago? But it turned out we were a little unsure if it was DeKoven or DeKoven. So what do? We call up a Chick-fil-A on DeKoven Street in the break, and we ask them, how do you pronounce the name of your street? And so it was the Chick-fil-A worker who did in fact confirm it is DeKoven.
Yeah, that is a kind of a tricky thing, right? Like in LA, now the street's been renamed Obama, but there was a rodeo and rodeo in the same town. So I'm glad that you guys did your fact checking.
There are no links that we won't go to get you the correct pronunciations and the correct facts on Jeopardy! We closed out the week with Gary Hollis, Carmela Chan, and John Spurney. Another tight game throughout the Jeopardy! Round. Gary really turned it on in Double Jeopardy! And with a string of correct responses and 2 nearly back-to-back correct daily doubles, adding $6,000 to his score, he jumped from 3rd place to 1st, heading into final just shy of a runaway. But then he was correct in final, and he secured the win. Gary, another Professor's Tournament player. He made it, of course, to the semifinals and then lost to finalist and fellow Champions wildcard player Ed Hashima. Gary, now the 2nd Professor's Tournament player to make it to the semifinals because Ed did as well in the clubs.
Yeah, we were just talking about this amazing Professor's Tournament, the gift that keeps on giving. What great players. And I think this just speaks to how great a player Sam is, which we already knew by his TOC performance, his Masters performance, and then the fact that he came out of a field that is giving us consistently strong players is so impressive.
Yes, because in Sam's 2-game final in the Professor's Tournament, I don't want to say he ran away with it, but he dominated throughout both games. So this really is telling about how good the competition is. All right, let's head back to last Wednesday. It was prime time, our last Celebrity Jeopardy! Quarterfinal. Kira Sedgwick, Mo Rocca, Amanda Seales, all 3 players were evenly matched, but Mo really stepped on the gas in Double Jeopardy!, forming a strong lead heading into Triple Jeopardy! He then left his opponents in the dust with the help of 17 correct responses, including 2 massive daily doubles, 6,000 and 5,000. All this on the way to his runaway win. Amanda was the only player who was correct in final, but it didn't matter. Mo had already locked it up. And one note in the celebrity game that, you can't anticipate things are going to be happening. And of course, we tape our shows well in advance. In the category Celebrity Tell-Alls, we did have a clue about Matthew Perry. And so we decided that we wanted to indicate on the screen that it had been previously recorded before his passing, a clue about his memoir. One of the clues I want to point out that Kira Sedgwick got correct was a clue in the category, ooh, I know. Kevin Bacon once said that when he attends a wedding, he bribes the DJ to play this song from a 1984 movie he starred in. Of course, What is Footloose was the correct response. Kira rang in correctly. Ken joked, how did you know that? And Mo joked, her marriage has been saved. But Ken clarified, and I want to clarify as well, that these games are randomized. So it wasn't that we knew that Kira would in fact play in a game with a clue that had to do with her husband. I think there was also a Macaulay Culkin clue that didn't happen to play in a Macaulay Culkin show, but I'm glad she got it.
This is, for everyone's sake, I'm glad she got it. This is kind of the fun of having Celebrity Jeopardy! I remember when Brad was on Celebrity Millionaire with Catherine O'Hara, she got a question about Home Alone, which she was in. And she was like, I was in this movie. So at least, Kira, you did, knew about your husband. I want to know if she can verify that this happens. According to the Clue, Kevin Bacon claims this. What I want to know is he still doing this?
Right. Does it continue? And you mentioned Catherine O'Hara, which just recently she presented Macaulay Culkin with his Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. And that was such a great moment to see that side by side of the two of them. Who doesn't love a little Home Alone throwback?
Tis the season.
Tis the season. Have you watched it yet?
We haven't watched it, but I'm saving it.
Yeah.
Elf,
yeah, all the good ones.
The new classics.
And with that, we have wrapped up the Celebrity Jeopardy quarterfinals. We're going to be back. We're going to have a few weeks off, but we're going to be back with our new night. We're coming back on Tuesdays. So January 2nd, what better way to kick off the new year? We're going to kick off the semifinals. That first game, Utkarsh and Buttkar, Mira Sorvino, and Lisa Ann Walter. This is quite a game. You're not going to want to miss it. Now it's time for our host chat, Buzzy.
Yes.
An audience member asked Ken, do you have an Alex memory from your original run?
The hardest part of being on Jeopardy for a long time is coming up with 70-something of those little anecdotes, the interview after the first break. And I think Alex was quickly realizing how boring my stories were getting. And he just started winging it, And I remember one time with no warning, he said, Ken, I keep asking you these questions. Is there anything you want to ask me? And I did not have anything in the chamber ready to go. And so finally I was like, what did you have for breakfast, Alex? And I would never have asked that if I knew how horrifying the answer was going to be. Because he said something like, a Milky Way and a Diet Pepsi. And I was like, wow, that's a real peek behind the curtain. That's the real working class Canadian kid, a Milky Way and a Diet Pepsi for breakfast. So there you go. You learned something new about Alex.
The funny story about that is that Alex actually changed up his breakfast order because his doctor said it wasn't very healthy. So it used to be Snickers and a Diet Coke, and then he would joke that it changed to Milky Way and a Diet Pepsi.
Yeah, it doesn't need those peanuts.
All right, it is time to welcome our Champions Wildcard finalist, Dennis Chase, to the pod. Hi, Dennis. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Dennis, first off, I mentioned this on the pod a couple weeks ago. My mom lives in Palm Springs, and she says Dennis Chase is everywhere. Everyone's cheering you on. What's it like to be a hometown hero?
It's great. I mean, I never expected to be asked back to the Alex Trebek stage in the first place, so everything is just a gift from this point. But yeah, the local TV station and a radio station and a newspaper got involved, and it was a great chance for me to promote the holiday concerts for the chorus that I sing in, Modern Men. So that was a great, sort of like sell Jeopardy and sell the concert at the same time.
Both great and entertaining, I'm sure. What's your favorite tune that you sing at the concert, would you say? What's your favorite?
There was a song called Angels that was written by our composer laureate, Robert Seeley. And it's just a beautiful song about how angels help people when no one is looking.
Wonderful.
I love that.
That's so sweet.
Let's take it back to the beginning. Dennis, I want to know, what's your journey been like to get on to Jeopardy? How long did it take? What was it like? When did you finally get the call?
Well, it's been quite a long journey. I actually tried out for the show for the first time in 1990.
Wow.
And I took the test many times. I passed the test, I believe, just about every time. But either, I didn't present myself well, or it wasn't my time to have my name picked out of the pool of contestants. So I probably took the test either 20 or 25 times.
Wow.
And I finally got on the show in 20 of 21, which, as you know, was in the middle of COVID. So it was really kind of odd having snack time in between the shows on our little circles out in the parking lot, eating in the parking lot.
Yes, 6 feet apart.
Not really meeting the other contestants because everybody had double masks on and we were 6 feet apart from each other. But it was still a great experience being on the show in April of 2021. It really was a dream come true, something that I'd worked at for a long time. But coming back this year was even better because we really got the chance to meet each other as contestants and stay in the green room the whole day and invite friends and have an audience.
Yeah.
These were all wins in my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. Most of our, contestants talk about that journey, and somehow they're almost grateful for not getting the call earlier and maybe getting the call at a different point in your life where your knowledge is just the sweet spot for Jeopardy. It certainly proved to be true for you as you were, a 2-game champion in your initial run, and then timing be as it was that you had a chance to come back for Champions Wildcard.
Well, I'm also proud to represent the over 50 club. We called ourselves the Gray Clubs. On Jeopardy. Many people tell me, I'm too old to try out for Jeopardy, or I don't think I'll do well. Well, the point you just brought up, I think my knowledge has broadened. I certainly have seen more Broadway shows and movies and things like that. I think many of the Jeopardy champions that I speak to are well read, and I've certainly continued that as I've done throughout my life. So it's probably a trade-off with the buzzer. I think I still did darn well with the buzzer. And the breadth of knowledge. People who are younger might be a little bit better on the buzzer, but they may not be able to match the areas that those of us who are a bit more along in years may have.
Now, when you did play your initial games and you found out your host would be Aaron Rodgers, what was your reaction to that?
I'm sorry, Aaron, but I had to say, who? Sports is not one of my strong categories. That's definitely something that I had to study for Jeopardy. And people always ask, what do you study for Jeopardy? The answer is you study your weak categories, and you'll only learn that by watching the show. I work in biotech. I did not study math and science, but I immediately looked up Aaron Rodgers and the fact that he had won a Celebrity Jeopardy. So I said, okay, he's going to do a good job as host, and that proved to be true.
Have you and Aaron kept in touch? He had a pretty tough injury to start out his season with the Jets. I assume you visited him, sent him some cards or flowers.
Yeah, when I was on the show, I kidded him about his shoes, and he liked my outfits, and that kept going. No, I have not been in touch with him. I did look up how to contact him because I felt really bad that he had just made all of these plans, and then they were dashed by the injury. If I had been able to contact him, I would have sent him some kind of, I hope you get well and are able to continue your dreams, just like I did when I got to meet you the first time.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Sweet.
Well, it's interesting that you looked up the fact that he was an actual Jeopardy champion, so it offered some legitimacy aside from his sports career. But, I can say Aaron did give a lot of preparation to come in. He was one of the guest hosts who did his homework.
Yeah.
He watched a lot of Alex Trebek shows, and he wanted to make it as close to, the way that Alex had hosted as he could. I think you could attest to that, Dennis, that certainly was true in his hosting.
Yeah, we had great rapport. I don't know if you guys realize this, you might have seen it, but when we took the pictures, we had to stand next to the Final Jeopardy sign, and I had on new shoes and almost tripped and fell into the Final Jeopardy sign, but I recovered. And you said, "Oh, you must be a natural athlete." And we both had a good laugh about that.
So fast forward to your next host, none other than Ken Jennings.
Yeah, I always tell people, when he answers questions in front of the audience, he's just like a real guy. He's much more bubbly. The host has to come across at a certain level of stolidness and credibility. But it was great to see that other side of him as well. And he is a terrific host, Ken. I tell people how hard the job is with multiple languages and scientific terms and countries and things like that. And I think it gives them more of an appreciation of how much this job is a difficult one.
Well, I like that you bring up that, you have to be kind of stoic in the role of host, but then you get to see that other side, because that was absolutely the case with Alex. He would host the game in a certain way. He didn't want to take away from the gameplay, but in that audience Q&A, that's when you really got to hear his sense of humor, when people would ask, boxers or briefs, Alex? And he would say, commando. That's when you got to see that wit and humor, and I think Ken is trying to carry on that legacy in his style of hosting.
Yeah, that question did not come up during either appearance of mine.
Ah, you missed out.
Boxers or briefs.
I don't think anyone has asked Ken that yet, actually.
No,
There's got to be someone that's going to come from the old days
if you're
of
listening.
being in the audience with Alex. Ken needs to be put on the spot. I would love to hear what he says.
Well, I am planning to go back and see a taping in March, so maybe I'll be the one.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
excellent.
like it, Dennis.
So, obviously, Dennis, when you finished playing back in 2021, there was not even an idea of a Champions wild card, let alone second chance and all this stuff. When it first was announced and you found out eventually that you were going to be a part of this, what was going through your mind?
Well, actually, what was going through my mind, and I think I said this on the show, I was packing to attend a Wheel of Fortune contestants reunion in Las Vegas. So, talk about an embarrassment of riches. So when they called, I was very excited. I actually didn't sleep much that night between looking forward to meeting like 100 people from who had been contestants on Wheel of Fortune, and then this call. But I'm absolutely glad that I had this opportunity, and was so excited to get the call. And if you ever call again, I will answer it this time, I promise.
Well, that's an interesting thing. You've got the Wheel of Fortune experience. You have the Jeopardy experience. It is our sister show. But what's your favorite, Dennis? We have to know.
Yeah. Here on Inside Jeopardy, we want to know which one you like more.
Yeah, I must admit I'm better at Jeopardy, so I think I like that one more.
Good answer.
There's more of what we call a chaos factor on Wheel of Fortune. You could get a puzzle you don't know. Like with other game shows, there's a big chaos factor that is just dumb luck. I don't sense a lot of dumb luck in Jeopardy. Well, there is some in getting the right categories, but I don't think I've really had that bad of a Jeopardy game in all the thousands of shows that I've watched.
So, 30 years from your first time taking the test to finally appearing, now just a few years later, you're coming back. You already have 30 years of more than 30 years of watching the show under your belt. Did you do anything special? Okay, now I've experienced a taping. How did you get ready to come back for this Champions Wildcard?
One of the things I did was not freak out as much.
Easier said than done.
Show, yeah, exactly. Well, I've also had a lot of stage experience, and I think that helps Jeopardy champions as well, to not be thrown by the 6 cameras and the lights and 10 different people telling you to do something at the same time. This actually happened the first day back. We were getting ready to start, and the makeup lady comes running over to me with a pot of what looked like Vaseline, and she's painting it on my forehead. For those of you who haven't seen me, I do not have hair on the top of my head. And she's painting it on there and powdering, and finally somebody else says, okay, he's stopped shining. Somebody who hadn't had a lot of things go wrong on stage might have been thrown by that, but I was like, this is par for the course.
The glamorous
but I think that's
show
an
business.
example of not freaking out. I still did the things that I did to prepare for the first time. Like I never learned state and world capitals growing up. I had flashcards for those, flashcards for the US presidents. But I tried to keep up with current events and pop culture, which is also another weak category. So I think that's mainly what I focused on coming back for the second time, and to make sure that I reveled in and enjoyed the experience. When I was a Jeopardy champion the first time, and I realized it was a runaway and I was going to win, I just started deep breathing and said, remember this experience because it's never going to come again. And I must say, it really nearly brought me to tears when you win and everybody on the stage refers to you as champ. You don't know what that means to us. Well, you probably do, but I want to attest to it firsthand.
Yeah, and you get to carry that title for the rest of your life. Jeopardy champion.
It's already on my work resume.
Nice.
Well, in your quarterfinal game, not that the game wasn't great, because of course you had that come from behind win with a correct response in final, but I loved the interview where you talked about those Alex Trebek Memorial cellar doors that you had, a special plaque made. You sent us the photo so we could see it. I have to know, how's your older brother responding to, your success, and also you telling the story of helping him through that transition and then therefore using your winnings to making those new cellar doors?
Yeah, I think like most veterans, he's very proud and a little bit shy. So when I talk about, honoring his experience, he gets quite emotional. He was having some physical problems from his war injuries, which is why we decided he needed to move in with my sisters. And this and a few other things was able to allow him to do that. They had to buy a different house so that they could all live together. And it needed cellar doors and it needed an electrical panel. And I was really glad to have that money on hand to be able to say, I can help in this way. So it made me feel really good. Hopefully it made you folks feel really good. I couldn't think of a better use of the money. He's doing okay. He still has his ups and downs, but I think it was a really smart move to have more people around to help him on a day-to-day basis. And he has a wicked sense of humor like the rest of us in the family. And I really appreciate the fact that I was able to help him and that you all were able to help him as well.
I want to talk a little bit about the semifinal game, which when you look at these statistics, just unbelievable. 28 correct responses, 97% correct rate, 58% buzzer percentage, $8,000 in daily doubles.
48 attempts.
Yeah, thank you. You finish the game with over $30,000. After that come from behind win, were you like, all right, I got to put an exclamation point on my next one? Because you certainly did that.
Yeah, people who haven't been in this situation may not understand it, but I call that being in the zone. I was in the zone that game. There were some answers I have no idea where they came from. Like, I think that was the game with avuncular. I'm like, where did that come from? I've probably heard that word once or twice in my life. And as I told Ken during the after discussion, I have a really good color vocabulary because I used to record books for the blind. And many people who are blind have gone blind later in life, so they still remember their colors. So when you're describing something in a textbook or on a page, you have to be very precise in your colors. And that came up twice actually in the run with Forest Green and Azure. So, sometimes doing something good for people ends up being great in the long run. But, those are just answers that come from nowhere. But yeah, I said, okay, I made it to the finals. I never expected to make it to the finals because all 27 people were really good. But I said, okay, I'm going for the win. Actually, in the final, the second day, I could have bet more conservatively and boxed out Jen, the third place person, and absolutely taken second. Or I could bet for the win. It's go big or go home, just like all the daily doubles in any kind of tournament.
Yeah.
So I don't regret that decision. My bank account probably will at some point.
We head into those finals, and kind of the opposite of what happened for Jen Jasinski between game 1 and game 2, where she was in the zone in game 1, not as much in game 2. Kind of the opposite for you. You really came alive in that game 2 of the final.
Well, I had to. I didn't want to go into the final Jeopardy being in third place, and as it worked out, I was in first place. But they were both really great competitors. Jen turned to us after the show and said, "Well, I had the buzzer on day 1. You all had the buzzer on day 2."
Yeah.
And people don't realize how important the buzzer is to the game. I don't know if I mentioned this. I actually bought a USB buzzer to practice with at home. You can buy one that's pretty close to the real buzzer. And as I was watching old episodes, I would click it and it would stop the show and I could see whether I got the right answer or not. Best $70 I ever invested, because I don't know if it really helped my buzzer skills, but it helped my confidence level.
Yeah.
And that's what I really needed going into the final, and it worked out. I wasn't afraid. Unfortunately, I didn't hit the daily doubles. If I had hit them and, of course, gotten Final Jeopardy right, I could have won, but it's the luck of the draw.
Totally. And as you said, everyone who goes on that stage wants to win, wants to take it all home. And I think if you've made it to this stage, you have what it takes to win it all. And it's better to leave having bet on yourself than leave because you bet too little. Like, imagine how much harder it would be if it's like, I got it right and I just didn't bet enough. I think that's a harder pill to swallow.
You're right. I would much rather go out thinking that I believed in myself and had the confidence to bet that much, rather than say, if I had only.
Yeah. Well, as you may or may not know, I have my what I call my Proust questionnaire of Inside Jeopardy. I have a few questions I like to ask everybody. First up, Dennis, when you are here at the Sony lot, what is your lunch order at the commissary?
Well, I got the first taping day, I think, is my favorite. It was a caprese sandwich. I love caprese with the basil and tomatoes and cheese, and especially the balsamic.
I feel like that's a pretty safe choice.
That's a safe choice. I like it. My next question, is there a stat from your time at Jeopardy that you are most proud of?
I think my buzzer percentage, my buzzer getting in, especially since I bought one just for that purpose, that was what I was most worried about. You heard the story of my buzzer technique, which set the internet on fire. I wanted to show that it worked, and I have a lot of converts to the two-handed system now. But I think I'm really proud of the fact that I tried to get on so many answers, and I was able to get on so many.
Yeah.
What's been the best part of the experience for you, Dennis? Whether it was your first appearance, your return?
Well, first that I finally got on the show. It took a long time.
Yeah.
I already mentioned about being a spokesperson or a representative of people who think they're too old to do something. You're only as old as you feel, or as quick as your buzzer reflexes.
I have to say, the more we've gotten to know you on the show and here in the interview, it's just another example of the great people that Jeopardy attracts. And so we thank you for being a part of this and continuing to be such a great representative.
Again, it was a gift to be on the show in the first place, to be asked back and to meet so many great people. What they said in the final was absolutely true, that it's nice to be treated so royally as a contestant and to be called a champ and to really feel like you've earned it.
Well, you're a part of that club's group. There's a lot of pride among your fellow contestants. Obviously, Nick Casconi is going to be representing in the TOC. You mentioned maybe making a trip back. Could we see you in the audience for TOC cheering on your fellow club's competitor?
I would absolutely love to cheer Nick on.
Well, we loved cheering you on, Dennis. Thanks so much for being such a wonderful part of our community. Wishing you all the best in the new year.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. Happy holidays.
Care.
And that is it for today's show. Join us next week with more Champions Wildcard highlights. Plus, we're going to speak with Champions Wildcard finalist from the club's group, Jen Jasinski, about her return to the Alex Trebek stage.
Cannot wait for that. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us at Jeopardy on Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, X. We will see you all next week.
Hey, Ken, what's that thing the kids say?
You mean smash the like, subscribe, and bell button so you'll be the first to know when we upload more great videos?
Yeah, that's it. Do that.